being on a plane, you're sitting next to a stranger, they lean over and say, hey, I'm just starting my journey. What advice do you have for me?
First of all, let me appreciate you for asking a question that I haven't been asked after 2,500 or so interviews over the years.
The very, very first thing I would say is you have to drop the ego, which is everyone's greatest obstacle. And so the ego is your ego.
In 2008, Grant and I had been married for 4 years. I was pregnant with my first child. The economy was collapsing, and we were on the verge of losing everything financially.
Hey everybody, it's Corey Poirier, back with a new edition of the Enlightened Passenger Show. Today my guests are Mark Victor Hansen and Crystal Hansen. I hope you enjoy the conversation where we talk about the book that Mark and Crystal released during the pandemic. Also talk about the work that Crystal was doing before her and Mark became a couple, and then since. Also the work that they've been doing together for the last number of years and inspiring others. And also the work that Mark did with the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. And of course, much more. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Mark Victor Hansen and Crystal Hansen. And once again, don't forget to get your copy of The Enlightened Passenger, which actually Mark was one of the people who endorsed it. And you can grab your copy of the book at thisisthebook.com. And I'll see you on the other side of this interview. Well, thank you so much, everybody. I'm so excited to be here with Mark Victor Hansen, Crystal Hansen. Super excited to have a great conversation about some of the work that they've done, some of the work they continue to do. As Mark just said off air, they're not done yet. So maybe I'll start. I mean, it's almost like there's probably no introduction needed, but I still will, maybe, if you guys are okay with it, get you to tell us just a little bit about yourself before we dive right in, and then we'll dive into the meat of things.
Well, I'm the most blessed guy on the planet because I married Crystal, of course. But I was a speaker that wrote, because everyone said, boy, you're the best storyteller I've ever heard. If you got that in the book, so I did a book. Then Jack and I met, and then I became a writer that speaks and a speaker that writes. And then suddenly now we've become a writer that speaks and owns this fastest growing, probably ghost writing company in the world that does fiction, nonfiction, and the big thing we're doing is biographies, which everybody ought to capture themselves in a biography as they get richer and older.
Amazing. And how about yourself, Crystal?
I'm, basically a self-made entrepreneur. I was a millionaire before age 30, but what really called to my heart was in the work that I did, just working with people. I started out in the real estate business, and I did some modeling. I did a lot of different things, but I loved to try to figure out what made people tick. And I would always find myself bonding with my clients and sitting with them, for example, my real estate clients, and we would start talking, and as we had the conversation, they'd say, could you write that down? I love what you just said. And I realized that everyone needed that connection, and not just that connection to other people, but to themselves. And I thought, you know what? I think there's a path here where I could really help people. So I became a board-certified hypnotherapist, certified life transformational coach, started that line of work, wrote some books, became a best-selling author. This big guy and I connected at an event that my mom sent me to that I didn't want to go to. And, destiny, I mean, it's like the universe was conspiring to bring us together, because I went to that event and we started talking and we never stopped.
I love it, and I know you both believe in synchronicity.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I love those stories, because again, if you didn't go to that event, we're not sitting here today. Just as simple as that.
That's right. It is so true. And my mom got the email, you got to go to this Author 101 event. There's publishers and publicists, because I was writing a book at the time called Pure Thoughts for Pure Results about the results my clients were having in my practice. And I was resisting. I was like, oh, Mom, I'm too busy. I had just gone through a divorce. She's like, no, you go. I'll watch the kids. And I called and like less than 5 minutes later, I thought they were going to tell me, no, the event's sold out. And then I could just quiet Mom down and she'd go. But no, he said, come on over. Rick Frischman called me back personally in 5 minutes and said, you need to come. We have space for you. We'd love to have you. And so a day and a half later, I'm there and we meet at the VIP reception. And it was just crazy destiny.
So I want to ask about, Chicken Soup, I know for a lot of people the story itself is sexy, the whole story. And, I was reading in the book that you have right there, Relentless, about a lot of different things that you guys went through with Chicken Soup for the Soul and stuff that had to happen for it to happen. I mean, I know a lot of people realize that you guys had to go through a lot of rejections with the book. I guess this, I mean, it's the personality probably that you have, Mark, so it's probably a foolish question. But why do you think you kept pushing it whenever everybody said, because I know people said to you, like, nobody will buy a short story, nonfiction book that's based on inspirational stories. So what made you and Jack, or either or, both say, I don't care, we still got to do it?
A lot of ways to do it. We got 144 rejections, and I've been selling since I was 9 years old because my parents didn't have any money. They were Danish immigrants, lovely, wonderful, bright people, but they just didn't have any money. So I've had to earn my own clothes and everything since I was 9. So, and I learned the 4-letter clean word, N-E-X-T, that when somebody says no, you say next. And I taught that to Jack, and we went for it. And then finally, after everybody had turned us down, we said, well, let's go to the BEA, Book Expo America. It was in Anaheim, and there's 60,000 people there. And we walk in with backpacks full of books and 3-ring binders. I mean, it was just ridiculous. We walk in, and I don't think you've heard this story. Guy with a long white beard, surplus body, but comes up and kisses both of my cheeks. I thought, who in the hell is this guy? And I got goosebumps telling you this. He said, you're going to become vastly successful here. I said, forgive me, but do I know you? He said, yeah, I endorsed your book. I said, well, who are you? Bob Fulgham. You're Dr. Fulgham? He wrote the great book. Everything I need to learn, I learned in kindergarten. I thought, I'd never seen his picture, right? He didn't put his picture in his book. I don't know what he looks like. So, but he said, this is your time. And we still got rejected. And then the last day, 3 days, we're going there, and our now former wives were saying, are you guys nuts? Don't you get it? When people keep saying no. But we were both doing these talks. Jack was in the educational market, and I was in the business market. And every day people gave us standing ovations for it. I mean, we can talk about a lot of it. And we pulled off magic. I said, I wrote it that we're going to sell it. And the reason it got rejected was, I'll blame myself, is that I wrote we're going to sell 1 million books. And all of them look at that and go, God, this guy's snickered. Nobody's ever sold 1 billion books. No one had. And I haven't. I've sold 500 million plus, now way plus. But, we just keep getting better. And what I did is I interviewed the top 100 nonfiction and fiction marketers. I said, how did you sell? I didn't ask how do you write, because I know how to write. I thought I do, I guess. Anyhow, so boom away, and I did everything they did and more, and we're still figuring out how to market every day, because that's what makes business work: marketing and innovation, and we're into both.
So I want to ask about one other quick thing about this book here, what I'm looking at, the Relentless book. Rick Frischman, I have that pronounced right?
Yeah.
So I remember reading in the book that, and this came up because I was just at this event called The Secret Knock, and people were talking. Actually, Greg Reed was talking on the stage with Kelly Cardenas about basically pay to play. Yes. And so, like he said, like a lot of people think that somehow people, like he just magically got on these certain magazine covers, and he said we're in a different world now, where you're in a different situation because of the notoriety, but a lot of people are paying to play. But I remember reading in the book that you guys had to hire him as a publicist and pay him a certain amount of money, which back then I think people thought publicists just liked your story, so they went and shared the stuff. My question is, what was your thinking then about investing that kind of money in a publicist? And I believe you guys said it has to be him. So you paid more probably too as well.
What happened is I interviewed all those people, and I said, who do you work with? And we were talking to everybody from Clive Cussler and Danielle Steele to Wayne Dyer to Zig Ziglar, and everybody was using this one guy. But he ultimately sold his company to Saatchi for a lot of money, which is the world's biggest. So, but he wouldn't answer my calls and take my $5,000 a month, which is how much it cost back in the prehistoric days, back in 1993. And we're at BEA, and we're sitting in a booth, but I kept pulling the chair out in the middle, and the police kept saying, "You're not allowed to block the road, buddy." And everybody comes with colored badges, so you know who's a publicist. Publicists wore green. And I knew what Rick looked like, because I say, in one of my first books, Future Diary, I said, write a list of 200 people you want to spend time with, play with, grow with, and have work with you somehow, and get your picture next to their picture. Well, I have my picture, Jack and Mark, next to Rick. And Rick is diminutive in height, like he's 4'11". You met Rick, lovely guy. But I'm sitting in the middle of this highway, and I see him coming because everybody else is towering over him. And I say, Rick. Now I've embarrassed the hell out of him because he doesn't know who I am, right? But I see his badge, and I know who he is. And I hug him, right? And I'm not letting him go. I said, I've wanted to get with you, and I'm just so thankful that you showed up at my place so I can talk to you now and get you to work. He said, who the hell are you? I said, I'm Mark Victor Hansen, and I'm hiring you. And he said, holy cow, anybody who's got the audaciousness of you deserves to work with us. And because he got his... When Jack had been at Harvard, third in his class, ahead of this guy, but the guy was, Scott Peck wrote Road Less Travel. 58 weeks, #1, and we whited out his name, put our name on it, put it on the mirror at my house, Jack's house, my office, mirrored Jack's. So we were #1 mentally before we became, which is the metaphysics, living in the assumption of the wish fulfilled, Neville taught us. Anyhow, we just knew that it would happen, and so Scott Peck had said, hey, look, Mark, when you're doing these medias, you got to do 20 a month. Now, if you did 20 in one day, I guess that would work the same. And so that's the first thing I told Rick, is I need to do 20 radio or TV broadcasts a day, because it was before podcast, right? And Rick said, nobody's ever asked me for that. I said, no, I'm going to ask for a lot of stuff that nobody asked for, because I'm going to be the #1 book in the world, and we'll make you more famous so you can sell your company for more. I just had it all figured out, and it was, pre-approach was all solid as a rock, and he was like this, going, holy cow, I don't know what hit me. Well, and we became great friends.
Yeah. Well, and Crystal, I want to ask you a question about goals. And Mark, remind me to ask you one other thing about Chicken Soup, and then I'll move away and talk about other stuff. But I do want to ask you about the publisher, and I think I heard the story that the publisher you didn't realize was in financial trouble too, that finally signed you guys. And then you guys had to commit to buying a certain amount of books.
Yeah.
Which goes back to, again, putting your money into it when people think it should all be done for you.
Two guys. Peter Vegzo ended up buying out his partner, Gary Seidler, who was so great to us. But Gary read the book and Peter didn't. He cried all over his silk shirt and said, okay, I'll take it if you buy 20,000 copies at $6 each. Now, he is printing them. His secretary shouldn't have spilled the beans. He owned his own printing presses and all that. And he was a guy from Canada living in Florida and Deerfield Beach. And ultimately, we had 138 people working 3 shifts a day, 7 days a week, because we went from $1.5 million to $5 million to $10 million to 15 million books a year. And nobody had ever done that, because I said, look, I want to dominate this thing. I'm going to do total market penetration. I'm going to own the mind of America, because we started out saying the soul of America is in trouble. We didn't realize the soul of the world was in trouble. And so we, sold books and sold books. Anyhow, yeah, they were $17 million upside down, but we didn't know that they were bankrupt and upside down. And we bailed them out, and we sold $120,000, paid it. And then all of a sudden we suddenly got distribution, and then suddenly we're going to places and doing stuff that nobody's ever done before. We can go into any of that, but I don't want to.
Well, I just thought that was fascinating, the idea that the publisher was in that much trouble. The one that finally said yes out of 100 and some was also in trouble.
Well, by the way,
isn't that ironic?
Yeah. Mathematics principles, I know a lot about math. Is negative times a negative is a?
Negative.
A negative times a negative is a positive.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
And so they're down and we're down, but together we plussed each other, right?
Yeah.
Because you got two negatives and they come together like that.
My head went to 0 times 0.
Right,
that's all right.
No, it wasn't 0. Yeah.
That's amazing. So, Crystal, I said I wanted to move over to some questions for you. One of the things I want to ask you about, you were an entrepreneur, successful. Mm-hmm. Did you practice some of the principles like we hear about, like visualization and goal setting and things like that? And if so, are you able to share what you consider maybe the top 3 that people should practice in their life?
Yeah, I think everyone's goals are so individual and so contextual to what's going on in your life. And I think we, as we go forward in our lives and we achieve things, we continue to refine our goals and redefine our goals. So when I started, I basically was a mother with a baby on my hip and getting eviction notices every month. So my original goal was to, start making money immediately, to support myself and my son, and eventually buy, a beautiful, comfortable home for us and be stable. And, that happened really quickly. And I did get my real estate license. I became the #1 realtor at the biggest home builder. And then miraculously, I had joined a modeling agency. Those television commercials went national. So I was getting residuals. And so I think because I was so fixed on a clear picture of having this freedom for myself and my son, I think the most important thing about your goal setting is have a very clear picture, clear and positive picture, and don't doubt it. You know, it's there somewhere for you, and you don't have all the answers. You're never going to, but you know, it's like the flashlight on the road analogy. You can just see, as if you shine a flashlight or your headlights on the road, you're not going to see the end of the road, but just keep moving forward. And that's what I did. I just kept taking one step. You know, I've never done modeling before. I don't know that anyone's going to like me. But I went and I kind of bluffed my way through, read some lines, you know, acted like I knew what I was doing. And you just do that. You just trust yourself enough and believe in yourself and just keep moving forward. And I decided, I had done a lot of temporary jobs at that time, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I was, you know, signed up for Kelly Services, and I realized I love sales, and I'm like, I'm good at this because I loved entrepreneurs. I loved people just coming up with an idea and turning it into a business and creating wealth and abundance for themselves. So all those things really started to light me up. So I just really kept putting one foot in front of the other, you know, based on the goals I had at the time. And it's like it kept being exceeded. For example, you know, I took the chance, it took some courage to just say, I have nothing to lose. They might reject me, but I don't care, at the modeling agency. So when my commercials went national and I started getting all these residual checks, suddenly I made enough money with Screen Actors Guild. I had to join the guild because you make a certain amount of money, you join the guild. It was like the best union available, and the benefits were the best. So they sent me this packet, and I was like, what? I had no health insurance. Suddenly myself and my son were covered fully, no deductible at the time. I mean, you don't have that anymore. It was almost unreal the way it just kept unfolding. But I just kept showing up, and I didn't have all the answers, but I had the vision, and I kept asking questions. You know, who would take me? You know, what do I have to lose? And I think if you're willing to ask yourself enough questions, you'll get there.
So it's really wild because what you first said made me think of definiteness of purpose, yeah. Napoleon Hill. Yeah. And you definitely had that, it sounds like. Yeah. I'm also curious, were you, when you were doing that stuff, and you're probably just kind of trying to survive, yes. But were you into any of this space, like the personal development space at all?
You know, I was very blessed. My parents, my mom, you know, was one of the first Tony Robbins followers. But at that point, I wasn't tuned in at all. You know, she was kind of doing her thing. I was a teenager or whatever. And, or I was young. And my mom and dad were both very positive people. My dad would always say to me, you can be anything you want. You can be the president of the United States. You can be Miss America. What do you want to be? And he would always ask, you know, decide what you want to be because you can be anything. And, you know, at the time you're like, oh, Dad, thanks, you know, I love you. But I think it did get inside of me, you know, that confidence that my parents had in me that I could do anything. I remember my mom telling me, I said, you know, there's at our school choir, they were, you know, doing solos. I said, they want 3 solos. She's like, you should do the solo, honey. I'm like, Mom, I've never done any solo. She's like, you have a beautiful voice. You go out there and you try out. But it was so sweet. I don't know if I could have, but my parents believed that I could. And I think, you know, I'm very grateful for that. They just had so much belief in me. And I think it gave me the confidence to believe in myself, the courage to believe in myself. So I think, you know, anyone who's listening, like, just have that courage to believe in yourself, right? It is the most important thing. Believe that anything's possible because it truly is. And the only thing that stops it is your lack of belief in yourself.
Amazing. Well, I want to ask you both about writing. So my other 2 main questions I want to ask you about is writing together and the publishing side. Yeah. So writing together, I mean, I know when you were out doing, which I find interesting, you guys were doing the circuit with this book here, Ask. And you guys were doing like podcasts like crazy. And I admire that because it goes back to your point about 10 interviews a day. But you guys were actually committing to that. But I'm more thinking about the writing side. So for me, everything I've ever written has either been like co-authors, so anthologies like Chicken Soup, or on my own. So I've never written with a writing partner.
Right.
And even music, I think back in the day when I used to write music, and I maybe twice ever wrote with other people, and it was really unique and hard to get used to. So I'm curious how you guys write together. In other words, is it like one writes and then says, what do you think of this? And then work together on it? Or do you literally both sit there, what about this idea? Like, I'm just curious how, because I haven't done that. The tandem writes together.
Yeah. Well, we always do this kind of morning session every single morning. We try to make it an hour, but if we don't, we might have to cut it back to 15 minutes if that's all we have. We do this prayer meditation time. but we also cover whatever is happening in our lives. We go over it together. So when we're working on a project, and we would take extra time to do this, obviously, when we were writing the book, we would brainstorm together the core ideas, the key ideas. We just kind of throw them out there, write them down, brainstorm them, and then start to organize them. And then we would kind of assign them to each other, like, okay, this is your piece. This is where you're strong. This is where I'm strong. And then we would just write our pieces and kind of look at it together, edit it. I did most of the final editing because I'm really nitpicky, and then of course we had our publisher editor, but yeah, so it worked really well. And Mark is so great at connecting with people that for the book Ask, he put together a lot of the interviews, dialed the people, explained to them what we were doing, the project, and of course everyone was very receptive to being a part of the book. They thought it sounded like an exciting project, and so that was really fun to do the interviews.
Because from everybody else's point of view, when you may have monster bestsellers, they go, well, what is it you do? So we have a great publisher. We love this guy. This guy, Anthony, loves us at Post Hill. And this is before we started our own publishing company, and we love Anthony Zaccardi. Anyhow, all of a sudden COVID hits. And we've got two monster meetings in the life insurance business. And I work for basic markets, one of which is life insurance. We've got one in Washington, D.C. with 11,000 people to sell this book because everybody needs to know how to ask in sales. And number two is down in Florida with 15,000, and we're already got the contract. And all of a sudden COVID hits, and they shut down all the seminars, all the meetings, all the convention centers. And our publisher calls up, and he's freaked. He said, do you want me to stop the book and we'll postpone? Because remember, at the front end of COVID in 2020 or 2019, we didn't know exactly what was going to happen. No one knew. And I said, no. I don't play that game. Not now, not ever, because the incontestable is you're going to have adversity, which is this was. You're going to have pain, this was. And you're going to have suffering, this was. Because we just spent 3 years writing a book together. Loved every minute of it. That's not the question. But the book wasn't for us. The book was because we talked to live to 7 or 8 million people around the world, and now on podcast, 100 million probably. But the point is, I'm making that up. I don't know exactly, but some of these podcasts have 10 or 20 million people on them, and we love it. And we're doing a lot of media still. The point is that he wanted to cancel. I said, no, we'll figure out a way to sell it. And we went on, I think the number is like 400 plus podcasts. Right. And it just went because nobody was doing that. And they didn't understand what I was surmising. Right. I said innovation and marketing. And then the innovation is podcasts have gone skyrocket city. I mean, Joe Rogan has got, 200 million people listening. I mean, we watched something by him this morning. No one knew that podcasting was the new TV, the new radio, and the new film industry. And then no one knew that right behind that there's this beautiful thing called Zoom, which has saved our butt and made us a wonderful, wonderful thing. No one knew that AI, which is as important as electricity or as important as fire, is going to hit and do that. And now we're teaching and ask that you're either AI enabled or you're AI disabled. Now we write all the books that we do, all of them. Human touch is still there. AI is not a sentient being, so it can't do it, but it can make sure you don't make any blatant mistakes.
Wow. Yeah, it's funny when you say that because I think about an interview I did around the same time with Kevin Harrington.
Oh, yeah.
And
I love Kevin.
And he had Mentor to Millions, I think was the name of his book.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that book released during COVID as well. And I remember interviewing him and him saying, for him, it was a blessing. He saw everybody else freaked out.
Yeah.
But he said, yeah. And he said, like, I'm getting on shows, like he was on, I think it was Jimmy Kimmel or a show.
And
He was
Shark Tank a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, but he was like on a show, whatever show it was. I don't know if it was Jimmy Kimmel. Whatever show it was, he said it had like 20 million listeners.
Yeah.
And he said, I did it from the comfort of my home.
Right.
Like
it
through
was
Zoom.
amazing. It was an amazing time. And because we didn't back down and Mark was so adamant about it, not only were we bringing so much comfort, the greatest reward of it was how comforted people were to get on the podcast, hear about the book, and then read the book. I mean, the letters we were getting were unbelievable. Like, this saved me right now. I started asking questions again because there was so much uncertainty. As you know, no one had any answers. And so it just really guides you, the book does, to ask yourself, ask others, ask God, to keep finding your path forward, and the dreams in your heart, bring those to your destiny, right? It is the pathway. It is the bridge to your destiny, literally. the questions and the answers that will be delivered to you. So the timing was perfect, and it couldn't have been better. And we're so thankful that we followed our hearts on that.
We were on the biggest show before Joe Rogan. There's a guy in Vietnam who's an American who lives in Saigon, who we'd met, and because we just had done the seminars through Vietnam, and amazing. The guy had us on with 10 million people. I mean, it just went bonkers. Just stuff that Kevin and we've been friends with Kevin a long time, so I got good things to say about Kevin. But it just, you go, luckily he had the guts. You got to, the cliches, you pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Everyone's going to go through the mud. Everyone's going to go through the quagmire. And that's why the first big story in the Bible is what you meant for my harm. In other words, COVID, God meant for my good. Well, look, I'm not happy that COVID happened, but we did not have to travel, and we could sell more books and have. And people paid us to do seminars like regularly, like $10,000 to go on a podcast to save Australia from other countries wanting to take it over because they're trying to go to socialism. And I teach in America, and I think Canada needs it too, is that you've got to have constitutional capitalism, democracy, backed with free enterprise, which is what Dr. Hill learned from Andrew Carnegie.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, and I want to ask you about the publishing side, as I mentioned. So on the publishing side, what made you decide to go that route? And can you tell us a little bit more about the way that you publish? Like, I'm sure it's everything else you do is unique from what the industry does. So I'm sure what you're doing as well is probably pretty unique on the publishing side.
I want both of us to answer, but we only want to do books that are unique, inevitable, and transformative to the reader. And our motto is that we take your impact story and bring it to life. Now, what's astounding to us is that most people get stuck in it. Oh, I haven't written it well enough for that. That's what we do. We've got all these great, phenomenal writers on our team that are the best and the best. And while the industry is generally contracting, and we've gone from a lot of bookstores to a few bookstores, we're transformative because we say, look, this isn't the only way to market. Like we're doing one of the biggest biographies that'll ever be sold is by our friend John Paul DeJoria. He's been my buddy. 30, 40 years. When you got a guy that's a billionaire come to your seminars, and I was running mega book marketing, and we did a $100 million company called Enlightened Millionaire Institute. You don't pay a billionaire to come to your seminar. It isn't. So I said, JP, what do you want? JP said, you're taking 20 of my people. You're going to sit. She was always in the VIP room, but I get goosebumps saying this. But all the people get the VIP. Well, hell, this is the most expensive meal, $150 a person. Fine with me. I got JP talking to these people and answering and taking pictures. Long story short, he calls us from one of his 13 houses in Greece and said, look, I finished my book. You've told me for 30 years I got to do it. I said, send it to me. He sends us 19 pages. I go, JP, your story is this big. And if you don't know it, just real quick, he's 21. He's got a 2.5-year-old at home and a wife at that juncture. He's selling encyclopedias, knocking doors, door to door, not making much money. He's walking up the stairs, and his wife's walking down the stairs. She said, throw me the keys, JP. There's a note on the baby when you get upstairs. The note on the baby says, I emptied the banks. I ran up the credit cards. I've got the car. You'll never see me again. I'm leaving you and John Anthony. I'm gone for him. Nobody knows this kind of story. I said, JP, look at that. I got goosebumps right now. It's that good a story. Well, he ends up creating Paul Mitchell, who's got 37,000 salons. They told him he couldn't do tequila. He creates Patron, does 100 million bottles a month. That's $1 billion too. Now, just one thing. He said, well, Mark, what do you want to do in marketing? I said, well, stuff in order form and everyone. No one's ever tried to sell tequila with a book. If you sell 1 in 1,000 and $1 billion too, that's 1,200,000 books. He said, I love the idea. We'll do it. He said, I also own a little island, Barbuda, where he went in after the hurricane, and he made it hurricane-proof with the top ichthyologist, fish doctor, and he brought back the turtles, he brought back the coil, he brought back the fish, 100% employment. Now he's turning that around in 28 islands. His title, which we love publishing, won't come on until January, but you can watch him on videos right now with me and other stuff, but it says, success without sharing is failure, right? Because everybody says, well, I just want the money for me. No. God didn't set it up that way. I did do a book called The Miracle of Tithing, which businessmen say, what's the miracle of tithing? I said, look, there's 5 T's. You got to be thankful in advance. That's tough, right? Then you got to tithe your thinking, then your time, then your talent, then your treasure. Every church, every charity wants the other place. Why don't you tell about our book company,
publishing.
Honey?
Well, I think the point is, we had a lot of people like John Paul. I mean, he had gone to other publishers and he really wasn't having great success. Can you imagine his story not being told? Who wouldn't want that story? So we were seeing this again and again, that these great stories were not being told. They weren't being published. It seems like unless you're a controversial politician or an athlete or someone super famous, movie star or something, or singing star, publishers aren't taking very many books. They're not really taking good books. So we said, why don't we do it? Let's do this. We started writing Reverend Ike's book first. And like Mark said, a lot of people have these great ideas for books, or they've lived a great life and that story needs to be told, but they're not writers. They don't know how to put it on the pages. And that's what we do so well with our writers. And so we said, this is where we can really serve people. And it has been such a joy for us because we are doing some of the most amazing stories, life stories. We're doing biographies, and we're doing, just great fiction stories, how-to business books, and all these stories need to be told.
Can I add one more thing?
Yeah, please.
So, look, I hope we don't go into economic troubled times, and maybe because of AI, maybe because of robots, we won't. I don't know that, but it looks like they're turbulent right now, shaky, according to Ray Dalio, is with $19 billion. The cycles are there. So we got two major depressions that happened in Americas, 1898 and 29 to 39. Well, 1898, the two books that were written that brought us out. Books are like the critical thing. These are the tool that get people the right mindset to go back and get the money set, the mindset to go back to work and create and innovate and market. So the first book was Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles. The second book was Horatio Algier. And we are very proud recipients of the Horatio Algier Award, where you get a gold medal in the Supreme Court from Judge Clarence Thomas, and 10 of us get it a year, and one Canuck gets it a year, Canadian. In case somebody doesn't know where you're from, I don't know who's watching. They're going to go, what the heck is a Canuck?
Yeah, they are.
Right? I think I'm not.
No, you're not.
We're
That's
great friends.
Yes, that's a common.
It's a realtor.
And in 29 to 39, 1937, Napoleon Hill's first really big book, Think and Grow Rich, which sold 100 million, Mahatma Gandhi, everybody loved it at the time. And then the other one is obviously my minister in New York at the time, Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, where I went in the morning and the afternoon I went to Reverend Ike, right, wrote The Power of Positive Thinking, and it just went, took us out of the depression because books are critical. We think entrepreneurship has got to come and reign again, where you find a problem, solve it, and go create, scale it, and make a fortune. We need more entrepreneurship. Because when I wrote 1 Minute Millionaire, I said, look, there's a million ways to make a million. There's one right, perfect, easy, acceptable way to each and every one of us, and pick one and then go do it. And a millionaire creates 10 jobs directly and indirectly, but a billionaire creates 10,000 jobs directly and indirectly. So we need more billionaires. All these politicians that don't know anything about economics are saying, we got to just tap the billionaires. No, you want to help create more billionaires. We've never had more than we got. And stories like JP's say, hey, look, you can start with nothing. You don't even have to graduate 8th grade, and look what you can pull off. Right. And look at how much good you can do for the world, because good can only be done if you've got energy, which is spiritual stuff that called money, that has a high utility value. Not as much as spirit itself, but it has a high utility value.
Amazing. So I'm going to do the last two questions. I'm going to take the books down. We do those two, and then we're done.
Absolutely.
Because I wanted to respect your guys' time. I know you guys. Just going to send it there. And just before we jump in, I wanted to tell you one thing. One book I think that would be a great fit with you guys, and I'm still blown away that he hasn't gotten a publisher, is, did you know Brian Proctor?
Oh, gosh, yeah. We love Brian. I've known Brian since he was born. Remember, Bob and I own 2 companies together.
He's a sweetheart.
Did you see his book he has out now?
No.
My Father Knew the Secret?
No.
It's brilliant. And he was talking to Hayes. They turned him down. A few people turned him down.
Everybody turns you down.
I these great books, you guys. They're not getting published.
I got his phone
It's
number.
a tragedy.
Yeah, I definitely do.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I said to him, that book, because I honestly think it's not hitting the amount of people it should be.
Right.
And it's a great book. It's a brilliant book. And he's literally sharing all the secrets he learned working with his father and growing up. And anyway, just thank you.
I know every one of the 5 Proctor kids.
No, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's a book that needs to be seen
and it
by
shouldn't
everybody.
go under the table.
No.
It should go above the table and bring the table up, like Bob would always say, get to the top of the table.
Well, look at it later, too. The cover is amazing. It's gorgeous, too. You'll like it. So anyway, check it out.
So it's on Amazon right now?
Yeah, it's on Amazon, but it's self-published.
Yeah,
but
we'll help him.
Okay, cool. So we're down to the last couple of questions, and I want to ask you guys, the first one I call the passenger question. And it's really what inspired my latest book, The Enlightened Passenger. And the passenger question is, if you were both, you can either take this separately or together, you can choose. But if you were sitting next to a stranger on the plane and they leaned over and said, I need some life advice. What do you got? What do you think you might tell a stranger?
I think I would tell them that don't be intimidated by the world around you, that every success and every achievement that you will ever have will come from the inside out. So really tap into your resources, your inner resources, tap into the spirit within, and you'll find some real magic there because you already have everything you need to create anything you want in this world and do so much good.
Amazing. Yourself?
And in our Ask book, we teach a principle that we got our title from for Chicken Soup for the Soul series, and that was 101 times you say, in our case, it was mega best-selling title, mega best-selling title. And Jack calls me, it was before cell phones, so it was 1989, and I had 88 animals on 1 acre. One of my daughters was becoming a vet at the time, and noise, craziness, 2:58 in the morning, and he said, Chicken Soup. I said, for the soul, we got it, and we've got goosebumps, but the publisher didn't see it. Now, the same thing is for each individual. Like she said, we're all born with a destiny code. Now, if you're spiritual, you say, God, what is my destiny? God, what is my destiny? God, what is my destiny? But you got to do it 101 times. It gets rid of the noise. It gets rid of the media. It gets rid of the noise of your kid's broken arm or failing in school or your wife or husband arguing with you or your boss firing you today. And once you find your destiny code, you got to put it in writing. So you figure out what you want, ask, put it in writing, then you got to visualize it, realize it, then and see it before it happens, and come to the end result, and then put together a team. 1 and 1 equals 11. Your team gets your dream. Team means together, everyone accomplishes miracles, and obviously we're the most formidable couple in the world, people keep telling us. So I guess we're the best team, and I couldn't adore her, respect her, or, somebody's putting us on the cover of a magazine this morning, a major magazine, and I said, look, she is... He said, she's so beautiful. I said, she's beautiful, but she's bright, and better than bright, she's wise.
Oh, I love it. That's amazing. Well, that's a good segue for my final question, which is the time machine question, which I told you guys a bit about. But, it's a similar question, and the context really is when I just asked you about stranger on a plane,
Yeah.
That's obviously advice you give somebody that you maybe just met for the first time. It's a little different to ask you, what would you say to your younger self if you could jump into a time machine, go back and give him or her some life advice based on what you've learned in the years since? So whoever wants to take it first, I'm curious what you would tell your younger self.
So I would tell myself, and this is something I really wish I would have realized at a younger age, that you can't change someone who doesn't want to change, that it's not your job to change people, right? So I think when I was younger, I felt like I could see the pathway to success or overcoming problems when people were going through dark times. And I'm talking about, family members or, friends or whatever. And I felt like if you'll just do this, I felt like I had to almost do it for them. But I realized as I got older, you can't live someone's life for them. They have to decide to come to it, on their own. But all you can do is hold a loving space. And, if they seek your help, you can give them your best help or advice. But also setting boundaries. Those boundaries are important. You just can't do someone's work for them. And it's important to release everyone to their journey, because I think sometimes when we love people, whether it's, a love partner or a sister or a parent or, your son or daughter, you sometimes, and I know there are people out there who probably have feel the same way, you just like, take me, God, not them. I know how to do this. And I remember talking to a spiritual advisor, and she said, Crystal, you're not the savior. There's only one savior. So just step back. Sometimes God is trying to help people, understand by learning a great lesson. And sometimes those lessons are painful, and you can't take those away from people. It's part of their journey. So you have to honor their journey. And it would have been nice to have a better understanding of that at a younger age.
Amazing. And Mark?
I unequivocally had the best parents ever. The trouble was they weren't educated, so I was mentally picking on them, and people were beating up on entrepreneurs, and I lived in little Denmark at the time, and they had Danish parents, of course. So now I would say, wow, they were just unconditionally loving to my 3 brothers and me. There are 4 of us. it was so great. And it wasn't until really late that I caught on to how good they were, how wonderful they were, how they used all the intelligence they had to take good care of us and make sure we were okay, even though we had to work and we were very disciplined. And then I just got to conclude by saying my mother predeceased my dad, and I was now making a lot of money by the time I was in my early 30s. And I said, Dad, I'm taking you to Hawaii. Well, I got him first-class tickets. He said, are you sure you can afford this, son? I said, you don't have to worry, Dad. I've got it covered. And it was so wonderful because he always dreamt of going to Hawaii, but he didn't have any money. So you're not going to go get a lei. You're not going to go swim in the Pacific. You're not going to, go see 8 islands and have the time of your life and have. I wanted to give him a memory back because he'd worked so hard as a Danish baker. His hands were beat red because he carried around 200-pound pans and just did it and didn't know any better and had terrible varicose veins from standing too much at night and eating stuff. And he desperately wanted my brothers and me to take over the bakery. And I said, Dad, I don't know what a white glove guy is, but I'm pretty sure I'm one of them.
That's amazing. So I guess just the final unofficial question, just to finish everything off, is if people want to learn more about what you guys have coming out, whether it's the books you're publishing for others, whether it's maybe something you're doing, is there a hub or where would you send them to learn?
Yeah, so for the library, for publishing, markvictorhansenlibrary.com, there's a way to reach out to us on the contact list there, contact form. And also, just following us on social media, reaching out, messaging us, Crystal Dwyer Hansen. Some people miss the Dwyer, but I love chatting with people on social media. So it's Crystal Dwyer Hansen on Facebook, Twitter, all of the above, LinkedIn. And then Mark, of course, Mark Victor Hansen, you know where to find him. And then we've got markvictorhansen.com as well, and crystalvisionlife.com.
And then last but not least, because we want everyone to become what's called a master asker. If people learn to ask, they would ascend to heights untold, unimaginable, based on the stacks of letters we're getting. Mm-hmm. So go to Ask the Book.
Oh, askthebook.com. Yeah.
Askthebook.com. We teach how to do it free.
Get the book, go to askthebook.com, and there are a lot of resources to really help you become a master asker.
Because we want more for everybody than they want for themselves. And most people go, oh, those rich people, those people aren't nice. They're haughty or whatever. And hardly the case. I couldn't intimidate anyone if I wanted to.
Amazing. Famous final words. Well, thank you guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. I knew it would be. I'll call it with your permission a to be continued and say till next time.
To be continued.
Indeed.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank
Fun
you.
talking to everybody.
Yes.
Hey everybody, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Mark Victor Hansen and Crystal Hansen. Hope there were a lot of takeaways, things that you can apply starting tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed the discussion around the passenger question. And once again, don't forget to grab your copy of The Enlightened Passenger at thisisthebook.com. Until next time, I'm your host, Corey Poirier, and this has been The Enlightened Passenger Show.